Hey guys, welcome to Real Men Talk. Today we're going to be talking about the importance of the tribe, the importance of surrounding yourself with a community of people who are like-minded and that are going to think like you and fulfill you more in the Spirit of God. So let's get started on Real Men Talk.
Welcome to Real Men Talk, discussing the tough issues facing men and their families every day. Here are your hosts.
What's up, guys? Okay, so this week we're talking about the importance of the tribe, and if you've never thought about the people that you surround yourself with and the people that you are letting into your life and feeding into you as a person, that's what we want to tackle today. We want to talk about the significance of being discreet's not the right word, being intentional about the relationships that you're forming, being intentional about the connections that you're making. And the whole thing that brought me into this idea of the importance of the tribe was I was reading in our scripture reading, we were reading in the story about how God was bringing the Israelites out of the land of Egypt, and he was bringing them into the promised land, and how they went in and they pretty much when you read it, it sounds like they obliterated nation after nation after nation to clear out the promised land. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, God, why would you want to go in and just clear out all these people? Why couldn't you just use them as a vessel too? What's the purpose? And the Bible Project actually does a really cool study of this, and they go through and they break down like the different parts of the Israelites coming into the promised land, and they break down why this nation was allowed to stay, this nation was pretty much on the path of destruction. And he opened my eyes to the point that if he was to allow every single person to live that was in the land at that time, then his people would have been corrupt. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't meaning to go through, God has purpose in everything that he does, don't get me wrong. But if he would have thought that they could have intermingled with the Israelites and been just fine and had zero issues, and they were going to bring him and further their path to Christ, then he would have let them. But he knew the importance of making sure that we are ridding ourselves of anything that has, the devil in it or has, marks of our past in it, and bringing it into the light. And when I sat back and I looked at that, I was like, like that's good stuff. That's good, because God cared for his people so much that he wanted to invest in their future, not just in their present. And yes, a lot of the times we are so focused on the present that we forget that we are also investing in our future.
Yes. And I love that word intentional. I love it, because we have, that's exactly what we have to be. We have to be intentional about the people we surround us with. The term unequally yoked, and people have different, whatever, but what it means is being unequally yoked with people that do not believe the same way you believe.
Right.
And there's reason for that. There are reasons why you cannot. We are to be of the world, but not. We're to be a part of the world, but not of the world.
Right.
Right. And so to where we have to be in the world, where we are bringing influence in, but we cannot allow the world to influence us. And in order to do that, you have got to be intentional. You have to be strategic. You have to know what you're doing, because if not, it is so easy to fall prey to, the people that will bear false witness against in your hearts and stuff. And so being intentional is the perfect anagram of, or whatever that is, right. Of picture of what we should. What we should be when we get out, in our faith, when we're in the world.
Well, when we take, go back to that verse that you just used about being unequally yoked. We box in verses sometimes, and we keep them in one place. So when we think of unequally yoked, we think of as marriage only, because that's where we usually think about it. Like, you don't want to be unequally yoked in your dating life. You don't want to be but we think about it like on that one-on-one, that relationship that we're building with another person. But we never think about all of our other relationships. We never think about our friendships. We never think about any, like even our family relationships. It's for any connection that you are going to start to make is, are you unequally yoked? And you have to ask yourself those questions. As a Christian, you are investing in your future. And we've talked about this. We've talked about how you have to be intentional on every truth that you believe. And if you're not intentional in those truths, then your future is not going to be the future that God has planned for you, that God has intended for you. And the intentionality behind his plan, bringing that word back in there, is going to be skewed because God is an intentional God. He knows exactly what he is doing.
He is.
He is not going to put you on a path of destruction unless you put yourself on that path.
Right.
Because he gives us that free will. But a lot of the times, and I when I was writing these, looking at some of the notes, I was like, how many different testimonies do you hear about how we have created or we've followed friends or we've given into, friends have led us into this, I was surrounding my people or surrounding myself with the wrong people, yada, 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 yada. And it takes us time. But if we would just realize, we talked a couple weeks ago about, our kids and how we need to start teaching them, how we need to step up and teach them to invest in their future. Because then possibly they wouldn't leave the church when they get older.
Yes.
And that's what we were talking about. But if we take this concept and apply it to that one, and we teach them to create intentional connections that are going to feed into their walk with Christ, that is going to feed into their daily devotions, it's going to feed into them building connections in church, then we're not going to see that decline anymore. But we don't preach the importance of a connection. And I just got back from the beach. Yes, I want to go back. It was so nice. It was a little cold, but it was nice. But when I was there, me and my mother-in-law, we were talking, and when we had a family member recently pass away, her friends stopped what they were doing and they came back for her. One of her friends was on the beach, and she left what she was doing and she came back. She stopped everything. And I was telling her, I was like, I have people, but I don't have those people. Like, those are the people that are going to drop everything for you and have gone through life with you. But and we were talking about that. I was like, I want those connections. I want those people who are going to drop everything for me and who are going to come to my aid. And she said, it takes time.
Yes.
And when we are trying to form our relationships, we forget that not everything, going back to the cliche, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Right.
Neither is your story, neither is your testimony, neither are your connections, but you have to be intentional about everything that you're doing. You have to be intentional about who you're allowing into your life, who you're allowing to feed into you. And she was I don't want to say she was picky, but she made connections with a discerning heart.
Right.
She prayed over every single one that she met, and she didn't not talk to people. She didn't not let people feed into her. She didn't not let people, form connections with her, but she prayed over the connections that she was making, and she let God lead her path. She let God lead her to make those connections that were going to ultimately get her to where she needed to be in her life.
Yes.
And she took time, and yes, she's older. So, she's learned many mistakes, and I'm sure she's made some bad ones too, but seeing that, it's just a testimony that it can be done.
Right.
But we have to make that choice, and we have to choose. That's the whole purpose of this, to be intentional in our relationships.
Right. Yes. And it's funny, and they're probably going to kill me, but if you're family, you're game. You know what I mean? And
Sorry, guys.
Sucks for you. But my nephew just recently started dating this girl. Good girl. My nephew, he's 21 years old. He's at the age now. He's looking for, he's looking for the one.
Right.
And, and I've been just kind of feeding into it, and, about doing it as a man, being a man about it,
Right.
Like for instance, when he approached her to ask her out, I was like, you better ask her out in person. You better, don't be a chicken about it. Don't be texting her, hey girl, can I get your digits? Stuff like, don't do that. Be a man about it. Go up there and ask her out on a proper date. And he did. And, it was something that, she really honored, you know what I mean? And she's a little bit older than he is, but, anyways, so they're early in their relationship, and he was kind of sharing with me, I'm going to get in trouble for this, but anyways, she had asked him like these really intentional questions. They weren't like super personal, you know what I mean? Just like things like, you know, what do you do in conflict? You know what I mean? Things that if you're going to be in a relationship, you should know about a person.
Right.
And something that struck me was they were very intentional questions. Mm-hmm. Every one of them, they were very what is your definition of cheating? You know what I mean? I mean, they're a weekend. These are questions that should be asked now.
Right.
You know, and I was really proud for her, you know, because we know her too. And for her to be asking those questions. But, you know, when you're letting people into your life, mm-hmm. when you're making intentional decisions, when you're making intentional connections with people, you should know about them.
Right.
You know, how do they believe? Mm-hmm. What are their thoughts on do they have the same theology as you do? Right. Are they like-minded like you are? You know, because if they can't answer those types of questions, maybe you shouldn't be spending so much time with them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And to be intentional about allowing those people into your life and being intentional about the relationships you have, because the friendships that you build at times are just as important.
Right.
As I have friends that are just as close as family.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so, but those friends that I have that are just as close as family, they are like-minded. Mm-hmm. They believe in Jesus. They believe the way that I believe. And I try to surround myself with people like that, with people who, whenever I call and I need a word, they're not going to give me a line of bullcrap.
Right.
They're not going to give me a line of hogwash. They're going to give it to me straight. It's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. It's going to suck. Yep. But they're not going to lie to me. And they're not going to feed me a line of bull. They're going to tell me the truth. And that truth is the same thing that I believe. Even at times when I don't want to hear what I already know is true.
Yeah.
You know, for instance, I used to work at this factory nearby. And we had a situation where a guy had gotten in a lot of trouble. And he had gotten in trouble for molesting a little girl. And it was very difficult for a while, you know, because during waiting for trial stuff, he kept coming to work, you know, and stuff like that. And I had created this friendship with another guy. He's now a pastor, and we become very close. You know, we were like-minded and all this stuff. And the Lord told me one day that I needed to go pray for this guy, right? Or I needed to go to what it was. Let me be a little more specific. God told me to tell him that God loves him and that he would forgive him. Okay. It was literally the hardest thing I've ever done. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, God, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. I'm
not going to do it. Right. And so my friend, I go to him. I'm like, you're not going to believe this. And I told him the situation. I told him what God wanted me. And he looks at me. He goes, if God told you to do it, you got to do it. You know what I mean? I wanted him to be on my side. Right. You know what I mean?
You wanted to be like, no, you're good.
Yeah. I wouldn't do that either. You know,
right.
Dude, whatever. He's like, dude, if God told you to do it, there's purpose in it, and do it. And I ended up doing it, you know, but he was straight with me, you know, and those are the type of people that you need in your life.
Exactly.
You know, you don't want people to just, you don't want yes men in your life. You know what I mean? I don't want yes. I don't want somebody every time I go to them be like, hey, I got this idea. Yeah, that's a good idea. But it's not really that. It ends up not being that good of an idea, and they knew better.
You know what I'm saying? To bring you back down and keep you on the that level.
You know, keep me on that level. You know, and that goes the same way with family. You know, and sometimes there are family members, as much as you love them, you don't need to spend much time around them.
Right.
You know, and that's hard to hear. You know, but the people, especially if you have children, mm-hmm. the people that you keep in your lives are important. Yes. You know, and I've. You know, Dusty and I will be married for 20 years this year in June. And throughout our relationship, we've had a lot of friends. Mm-hmm. And there are friendships that we've had to distance ourselves with. And they were very hard to distance ourselves with. Our kids were friends with their kids, you know, and stuff. And they begin to live a different lifestyle than what we accepted.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, I didn't come down on them. I mean, I was straight with them, and it wasn't one of those things where I was like, oh, we can't be friends anymore. No, we just begin to withdraw ourselves.
Right.
The more we seen of this lifestyle, the less, we wanted our kids to be around it, the less we wanted, and it was hard because we were friends for long, like years and years and years.
Right.
But keeping that circle clean, keeping that circle tight, and to this day, they're back on the same path, different. They ended up divorced and but they're back in church, and all this stuff. But our relationship never did mend the way that I wish it would have.
Right.
And it was tough. It's tough because we were really good friends. And, but to keep that circle close, to protect my kids, to protect my wife, to protect my soul, we didn't want to live that way.
Right.
And that's important stuff.
Well, and you have to be purposeful in everything that you're doing. I mean, we're talking about the male perspective here, but as men of God, especially with kids, like your kids are seeing everything. They're not just watching you. They're watching everybody you hang around with. They're watching how you interact, and that's what they're going to learn. And I had we're just talking about all family members tonight. Sorry, guys. So I had one of my family members call me the other day, and he starts chewing me up and down another, just talking to me, yelling at me. And he wasn't yelling at me, but he was yelling at me about a situation that was happening. Right. And I just stopped him. And I said, there are ways to talk to people, and this is not how you're going to talk to me. Right. And he's older than me. I mean, we're talking 20 years older than me. And I said, nah, probably not 20. We'll say about 10 to 12 years older than me. But I told him, I was like, you're not going to talk to me this way. I was like, when you are finished, when you have a level head, when you have calmed down, you may come talk to me again. And I love you, but I'm not going to let you talk to me this way, because that's how my kids are going to see people talking to me, and that's what they're going to think is okay. Right. And that's not okay. It's not okay. And so I told him, I got his wife on the phone, and I said, when he's calmed down, he's more than welcome to call me, or if I need to come over, I'll come talk to you. I said, but until he is calm, I will not talk to you. Yeah. And so later on, I never talked to him that night. I did call back and check to make sure everything was okay. But I found him on Sunday, and I said, I want to talk to you on Sunday at church. Mm-hmm. And so he got there, and he came up to me and he goes, I'm super sorry about, how everything reacted. I said, that's fine, buddy. I said, I'm not mad at you about how you handled the situation. I said, we all make mistakes. That doesn't bother me. I said, but how you react is how people are going to see it's okay to react. I said, especially in your household. And I said, so all of your kids saw how you reacted, and they're going to think that's okay. And that's not okay. And he was like, yeah, you're right. That's not how I should have reacted and stuff. He goes, I was just scared. And, when we do things, we react certain ways when we're scared, but we can't not sugarcoat it just because they're family. That's right. We can't stop being intentional and purposeful in how we interact with people because they're family. Right. And the same goes for my students. They'll come to me and they will ask me, and I'll ask them, do you want the truth, or do you want me to sugarcoat it for you? Because I need to know it now. And they're like, no, tell me the truth. And I'll tell them the truth. Right. And they're like, well, Coach Sal, that was like super harsh. I'm like, you asked for the truth. You wanted to ask for. Well, and there's sometimes like they want me to lie to them. Like one kid, what was it? They were doing some sport, and they weren't good. They just weren't. And they're like, Coach Sal, do you think I can make the team? And I'm like, no, I don't think that you're calling. I think you need to find something else to do. And he goes, what do you mean? I'm like, but you're not good. You are great. And then I went through and I'm like, you're great at so many other things. And it's not going through to, tell them that they can't do something. Right. But I want them to know that people aren't going to lie to them. I want them to know that people are going to tell them the truth, and that people are going to feed into them the truth. Because if we filter lies into our kids, if we filter lies into our relationships, that's all they're going to come to. They're just going to be lie after lie after lie. And we've got to make sure that no matter what we are telling them, even if it hurts sometimes, it's the truth. So we're going to take a break for a little bit, and when we come back, we're going to continue talking about the importance of building the tribe around us.
This portion of the Real Men Talk is brought to you by R.L. Persons Construction. For over 29 years, they have been a regional leader completing projects that include private, municipal, state, and federal agencies of all types. From mass grading, utilities, concrete of all types, to buildings both conventional and pre-engineered steel. You can expect excellence in all aspects of their finished work. Contact them today at 573-686-1323 and let them know you appreciate them bringing you Real Men Talk.
If you want to join in the conversation, join us on Thursday nights at 6:30 p.m. We gather with other like-minded Christian brothers to discuss hard-hitting topics that affect men on a daily basis and use a biblical approach to overcome common strongholds that affect our families. We show men the importance of being the spiritual leader of their home and what it means to be a real man in the eyes of Christ. Join us at the Palace of Praise, located at 1400 Herschel Best Boulevard in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. We meet in room 400 every Thursday. Come be a part of the discussion.
Hello, this is Heaven.
Help! My wife will be home any minute.
All lines are currently busy.
Oh, I'm in trouble.
Please remain on the line. Your prayer is extremely important to us and will be answered in the order it was received.
Oh, this is not good.
To expedite your prayer, please choose from the following.
Okay.
For financial matters, press 1 now.
Wife.
For family matters, press 2.
Okay.
For in-law problems, press 1 now.
No, wife, come on. I need a miracle.
For problems regarding your spouse,
Hello, dear, I'm home.
if you've had an argument with your spouse, press 1 now.
No, I'm trying to avoid one.
Guess what today is?
Hurry.
If you forgot your anniversary,
Yes, that's it.
A prayer can be as short as, Lord, help me. Isn't it nice to know that God doesn't have an answering service and that He is always there? Another message from Lifeline Productions, the comic strip of radio, at lifelinepro.com.
This portion of Real Men Talk is brought to you by the Jeweler's Bench. They are a full-service jewelry store offering many styles of gold, silver, diamonds, and gemstones. And all jewelry repair is done in-house so you can get your treasured pieces back as soon as possible. They are also a licensed Citizen Watch dealer. Make sure to visit them today at 1353 North Westwood or call 573-686-1522. Call or stop in and thank them for bringing you Real Men Talk. If you have a question about this week's show, please drop us an email to realmen@palaceofpraise.com. We would love to hear from you. And now back to the show with Anthony and Kyler.
All right, guys, we're back and we're talking about the value of building your tribe, the value of surrounding yourself with people who are going to feed back into you, who are going to, instill the godly values that you want in your life. So as I was looking at this, one of the articles I was reading posed it like this. They said, have you ever thought about how God uses friendship as an instrument for sanctification? And I sat there and I was like, you know what? What are you asking me? So then I went and looked up, sanctification. Like, okay, well, what are they talking about here? And so the definition, just the Oxford language definition says the action of making or declaring something holy.
Yes.
And I said, okay, break it down a little more for me. And I was like, so then literally the next thing says, in the most basic sense. I was like, perfect. Thank you. That's what I wanted.
That's it.
To sanctify something is to set apart for God's special use and purpose.
Yes.
And I was like, I never thought about it that way. Like, if you sit here and you ask yourself, are my friends, are my tribe, is my community getting me closer to God's purpose for my life?
Oh, that'll preach right there.
And I said, I think I need to have some conversations. and I'm pretty discerning when it comes to my friendships, but I never thought it that way.
Yeah.
I never thought to ask, are my friends helping me get to my ultimate goal? Because I'm like, this is my path. This is I'm responsible for my path, and I'm going to get myself to the end,
Mm-hmm.
But it's not that way.
Right.
That is not how God intended it. And so then I was like, okay, well, God, what are you saying? And so then I stumbled across this, and it was talking about it literally says examples of friendships in the Bible. And it was like Abraham had Lot, Ruth had Naomi, David had Jonathan, David had Abiathar, David had Nahash, David had a lot of people. Okay. And then it had Job and his friends. And then there was Elijah and Elisha. Daniel had Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Jesus had Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Paul, Priscilla, and Aquila. Paul, Timothy, and I don't know. I can't. I'm sorry, guys. But I was like, it was true, because without these people beside each other, they would have never fulfilled the purpose that they had or that God had for them. And it wasn't because they couldn't do it alone, but God never intended us to be alone. God never intended us to walk through life alone. I mean, go back to Genesis and look at Adam and Eve. He said, it is not good for man to be alone. Mm-hmm. And he started it with Adam and Eve. And then he kept building that. He kept building on the connections. And I was like, I got some questions I need to ask. I got some reflecting to do, because I want to get to God's purpose. I mean, that's the whole point. Right. We want to get to God's purpose in our life. Like, what are we here for? What are we doing? And we may never know what our purpose is. We just know that we are serving a purpose that God has for us. And he doesn't always make that crystal clear, but we have to do everything purposefully, even into our relationships, so that we can fulfill that purpose. Because if not, then we are letting things in that are going to hinder that. We are letting the devil use avenues, because the devil can use your friends.
That's right.
He can put people in place who are going to take you so far away from his purpose that and he can do it real slick too. Yeah. Because they can come in and they can look like they are, picture perfect Christians. Right. And then you look at them a little bit down the road and you're like, I could have been here, but I chose here. And I never thought about it.
Well, like when you talk about people of the Bible, well, look at Job. Look at Job's wife. This is his wife. This is the gift that God gave him. Yes. And she's like, dude, just curse God and die. Mm-hmm. You look at the disciples. I mean, at one point, Jesus told Peter, get behind me, Satan. I mean, he called him Satan. Right.
To his face.
To his face.
He didn't send it through a text message. He didn't send it. He said, you know what?
He didn't go, hey, John, you go tell Peter, He didn't do that.
No. Yeah. But that's how he did things. He purposely picked. I mean, he was a friend of tax collectors. He was a friend of physicians. Everybody, every lowlife that the Israelites, the Sanhedrin, and the officials during that time would have called scum of the earth. Mm-hmm. That's who he chose to be friends with, because he knew that they were going to help finish the purpose of his ministry. Yes. They were the ones that he planted. He planted those relationships. He formed those relationships. He made those relationships so that way the purpose of the Father could be done. Right. And he led that by example, and everything in his ministry was leading by example of what he needed to do.
Yes. And when you talk about people of the Bible and you talk about, strengthening your tribe and different things like that, I've got this thing that I like to ask my guys on Thursday night in the men's group. And I've talked about it on here a couple of times, but it's worth repeating again. And, but every single person should have a Paul, and every single person should have a Timothy. Mm-hmm. You should constantly have people that you are surrounded with that are pouring into your life. Exactly. And you should have people that you are pouring into constantly. Like those people will change, over time. You will have, maybe you'll, your Paul will move off or whatever that looks like, and you fill that gap, or maybe you pour into Timothy's, and those people grow in the faith and they go on to further their ministry, and you will bring in more Timothy's. Yeah, exactly. But you should constantly have people in your life that are pouring into. And the thing is it takes both. Mm-hmm. It takes both, and I heard Josh Reason say one time, you should also have a Peter, which when you look at Paul, Peter was a peer. Yeah. And so people that you could reflect off of, these are your everyday guys that you hang out with constantly. Right. They were both, Peter was an apostle. He knew, they were like-minded. You should have people like that you could just glean off of. Right. That you could just lean on. Not necessarily somebody that you're just constantly bringing wisdom from, or just constantly pouring into, because you need those also. But you also need people in your life that are like-minded that you just just spend time with.
Yes.
You know, and those are vital, important parts of our quote unquote tribe.
Right.
And to have those people, and that because you should never stop growing.
Yeah. No.
Okay. You should never stop growing. If you ever stop growing, you're dying.
Yes.
You know, there's no in between.
Yes.
You should constantly now, don't get me wrong. There will be times of plateaus, you know, where things just seem like they just kind of level off. Well, God's just kind of like a resting period. But those you can't stay there.
No,
you can't stay there. You have got to hit that mountain again. You've got to start that climb again. And that's what the Pauls are for. That's what the Pauls and really and the Timothys, because as you are learning, as you are gathering information, as you are growing spiritually, that's not just meant to be hid for you.
Right.
You know, we were talking to men's group last week. I think one of the biggest misconceptions of the Bible is Matthew 28, the Great Commission.
Yes.
Go ye therefore, make disciples of all nations, baptized in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. You know, and so often we equate that to evangelism.
Right.
But he said, go make disciples. You know, how did Jesus make disciples? He spent every day with them.
Yes.
He constantly was, you know, it's not a one and done deal.
Right.
We want people to pray the prayer of salvation and then send them on their way. That's not what making a disciple is.
Yes, exactly.
You know, you were birthing vision into these people and teaching them. And sometimes that is hard. Sometimes you have to, hey, what you were doing is wrong.
Right.
You know, and sometimes you know, you will lose people. Sometimes people will stab you in the back. Sometimes you will ask somebody to do something and they will let you down.
Yes.
Just look at the life of Jesus.
Yes.
You know, look at them disciples. When Jesus went to the cross, every single one of his disciples abandoned him.
Right.
Every single one of them.
And one helped him get there.
Stabbed him right in the back. Kissed him on the cheek.
Yep.
For 30 pieces of silver. And, you know, and yes, it's difficult. Yes, it's hard. Yes, you can become wounded, you know, but it is so important because you have got to continually be growing.
Right.
And you have got to, and no matter what it looks like, no matter what it sounds like, you've got to be making disciples. You have got to pour into people.
Yes. Well, and we go through and we think about surrounding our friend with people who are going to feed into us. But when you look at your friend group, how many warriors do you have with you? How many warriors are surrounding you? I was reading this article and they said, you know, I used to be that person who I didn't want to be around people. Like they were
me too.
Gone. Right. Listen, there are just times where I don't want to be around anybody. Yes. And then you got people who are like, well, I'm an introvert, so I want to stay away from people. But God said in the Bible, it's not good for man to be alone.
Right.
And once again, we box that in to marriage only, but it's not good for man to be alone in general.
No, it's not.
And they go on to say that it's important to surround yourself with warriors. And the author equates it to David and Goliath. He was like, David fought the first battle, but that wasn't the last Goliath. And they go on to read, and it said, and this is in 1 Chronicles 24:8, and it says, after there arose a war with Philistines and Gezer. And I'm hoping I'm saying some of this right. Somebody, because there's a lot of big words. Then Sibbecai, the Hushathite, struck down Sippai, who was one of the descendants of the giants, and the Philistines were subdued. And then there was again war with the Philistines. And Ethanon, the son of Jair, struck down Lami. Guys, we got to work on these names. The brother of Goliath, the Gittite, the shaft of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. And there was again war at Gath, when there was a man of great stature who had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in number. He was also descended from the giants. And when he had taunted Israel, Jonathan, the son of Shimeah, David's brother, struck him down. They were descendants from the giants in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants.
Yes.
It wasn't David alone.
Right.
David surrounded himself with warriors who were going to go into battle with him.
Yes.
He didn't stop after Goliath and he's like, you know what, I'm done. I'm not going to do anything more. I'm going to stop this Goliath and hope that I can just get the next one. He knew that this wasn't going to be the last challenge he's going to face in life. And we go through challenges every single day of our lives.
Yes.
Some are big, some are small. Not every challenge is the same. But when we hit the challenge that seems like the mountain that we're not going to get over, it helps to have those warriors who are going to help carry that burden up the mountain with us. When we have somebody who's going to
so necessary,
who's going to fight alongside of us, who's going to speak those words of encouragement to us. And sometimes when I go back and I look at Job, they were talking about how his friends came at the very beginning. It says they sat down with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and no one spoke a word to him, for they saw his grief was very great. Mm-hmm. They were just there.
Yep.
They didn't say a word. They didn't try to console him. They knew they couldn't do anything, but they could be there.
Right.
And we've got to surround ourselves with warriors who are just going to be there, who are going to show up, because half the time that's half the battle is just showing up.
Yes.
And God knew when he surrounded when he chose his 12 disciples, that they had their challenges, that they had their issues, but he knew they were going to show up. They were purposeful and everything. That didn't mean they didn't have their questions. That didn't mean that they didn't, sometimes doubt what they were doing, because it was hard. It's a hard life. Their challenges, people wanted to kill them. So yeah, those challenges were big, but they still showed up and they showed out. Yes. And they made sure that what they were doing, the ministries that they were feeding into, was creating more and more warriors.
Yes.
And we as men, the importance of being surrounded by warriors, because we handle things differently.
Right.
When I look at, I was talking to my mother-in-law again. We had really good talks on vacation. But I was talking about, the importance of prayer.
Yes.
And how I love elder prayer. How just seeing people praying for each other, fighting for each other.
Right.
Because that's what it is.
Yes.
Yeah. They are fighting. They are fighting a battle. Someone is helping you intercede, which is what Jesus does for us all the time. But they are fighting for you right there in the midst. They are stopping what they are doing and they are fighting. And that's a warrior. And those are the people that we have to be, because we are products of our environment.
Right.
If you are going to surround yourself with people who are going to tear you down, who are not going to feed into you, who are not going to lift you, who are not going to help you get to the next part of your life, who are not going to help you reach sanctification,
right,
then you need to do away with them.
Yep. And
that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy.
Right.
Like you said, there was friendships that you had for years that you had to do away with, or you had to, stop being so close to them. That doesn't mean you don't love on them.
Right.
That doesn't mean you can't pray for them. And that doesn't mean that maybe God can't restore that relationship at a later time.
Right.
But that means that you are putting God's purpose for your life before yourself.
Right.
And that's what we have to remember, is when we are creating relationships, we're not creating relationships to, fulfill who we are inside. We are creating relationships to fulfill God's purpose in our life. Right. And if every relationship that we're making is not doing that, then it's not going to be blessed. And we wonder why things get hard. We wonder why things are not, they're like, okay, well, this person had it so easy over there. Why is it so easy for them? Why is it so hard for me? And sometimes we just need to turn the mirror around and say, what am I doing to not make it easy?
Right.
Like one of the simplest things is tithing. Like when God asks for 10%, he doesn't ask for any more. He just asks for 10%. And it's a simple gesture, but a lot of people don't do it.
Right.
And then their finances are tight and they're like, why are my finances tight? I'm like, well, did you tithe?
Right.
They're like, no, I didn't have the money to tithe. Well, listen, I don't have the money not to tithe.
Right. That's what I say too. Yes.
But he just wants simple obedience from us.
Yes.
And that means in your friendships too. And that's the hard part, because we as humans are emotional beings. Right. We crave a connection.
Right.
And so anybody who will give us a connection, we accept it.
Yes.
And we can't be that way.
No.
We have to be discerning in the connections that we are making, not just because it has to do with our eternity. I mean, that is a large part.
Right.
But it could also affect the eternity of those around us.
And that's key. That's key right there. And just a lighthearted analogy, something that when I started the men's group at our church, and this has been several years ago, when we started our Thursday night group thing, God gave me this picture. I say he gave me this picture. He brought this picture back to mind. Have you ever seen Lord of the Rings?
Yes.
You ever seen the first one?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember at the very opening scene when they're talking about, Mount Doom, all that stuff, and you have this line of elves and these orcs just come in and they just go, and all the elves, you just see them like jump over and, there's just swords.
Yeah.
It was like a solid wall, and the orcs were just falling in by the droves,
Yes.
you know what I mean? That is how I picture, but we like that picture, as
Right.
men, we like that picture.
Yes.
But do we know what those warriors went through to get to that point?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And what they had to do in, day out, the grind, the practice, the spending time with each other, knowing each other's thoughts, knowing, how one person is going to act. It's like basketball team. I was watching the XFL the other day, last night, I guess it was, and they were interviewing this guy, and I don't even know who it was. I can't remember. It was San Antonio, I think, was playing with somebody. But anyways, they were talking to this player, and they're like, what? And he's like, well, me and this guy, we've played a long time together. And so he kind of knows what I'm thinking. I know where to be for him,
Right.
And so we kind of glean off of each other, and that's what it's like.
Yes.
That's what it's all about.
Yes.
And when you're becoming this warrior, when you're trying to get into this fight spiritually, because it is, we are at war.
Yeah.
And to have those people that know your thoughts, like Job's friends, they knew Job didn't want to talk.
Right.
Job didn't. He probably couldn't talk. You know what I mean? Going through all the things that he'd went through, they knew that he just needed some more moral support. They knew his thoughts. They knew how his personality. They knew how he worked. You know what I mean? And they knew that the best thing that they could do for him then, what would give him the most strength, was just to be there.
Right.
And that's what it's all about, to surround yourself with people and glean off people and grow together. The Bible talks about iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
So, maybe as a listener, maybe maybe you're having a hard time with relationships in your lives, friendships, whatever it is. Maybe you find yourself having a hard time making friendships, making those acquaintances, and maybe you just looking for somebody to talk to or to pray with, whatever. Email us, realmen@palaceofpraise.com. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Real Men Talk, Real Men Ministries. And, we would love to hear from you. If maybe somebody who is struggling, send them this podcast. Share it, like it. The more you guys like and share, the more people get, the more it becomes available to more people. And so, we appreciate you guys listening. And if you've got any questions or anything, please hit us up. And so, as always, I want to end in prayer. Holy Spirit, teach us to be leaders of our homes, of our communities, and of our churches, and teach us to be godly, courageous men. In Jesus' name, amen.
You've been listening to Real Men Talk, brought to you by Palace of Praise Church in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. If you would like to get in touch with us, shoot us an email, realmen@palaceofpraise.com, or visit our website at palaceofpraise.com. If you're a man age 16 and up and would like to be a part of the conversation, join us at the Palace of Praise every Thursday night at 6:30 p.m. If you don't have a home church, consider joining us for worship on Sundays at 10:30 a.m. and 6 p.m. Palace of Praise is located at 1400 Herschel Best Boulevard in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. New episodes of Real Men Talk drop every Thursday at 5 p.m. You can find us at iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Anchor.fm, Amazon, and more. Real Men Talk is a production of Palace Media Service.
Real Men Talk has been brought to you this week by RLP Construction in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. For commercial contracting of all types, see RLP Construction today. And by the Jeweler's Bench in Poplar Bluff. They are your one-stop shop for all your fine jewelry needs. They also do in-house repair and are your Citizen Watch dealer. Make sure to thank our sponsors for bringing you Real Men Talk.
If you want to join in the conversation, join us on Thursday nights at 6:30 p.m. We gather with other like-minded Christian brothers to discuss hard-hitting topics that affect men on a daily basis and use a biblical approach to overcome common strongholds that affect our families. We show men the importance of being the spiritual leader of their home and what it means to be a real man in the eyes of Christ. Join us at the Palace of Praise, located at 1400 Herschel Best Boulevard in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. We meet in room 400 every Thursday. Come be a part of the discussion.